I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 34, and I'm standing on the balcony of my new $6 million ocean villa Champagne in hand watching the sunset. 3 days ago, my parents texted that they wouldn't attend my housewarming because my success was too showy, so I invited everyone they know instead. Now, as guests arrive, I spot my parents' car unexpectedly pulling into my driveway. Funny how rejection turns to interest when everyone important is at the party they weren't invited to. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family members who couldn't celebrate your success. Trust me, what happens next will make your jaw drop. I grew up in a modest, split-level home in Fairfield, Connecticut. It wasn't fancy, but it was in a decent neighborhood with good schools, something my parents, Richard and Diane Mitchell, reminded me of constantly. "We've sacrificed everything for this neighborhood," my mother would say usually, right before explaining why I couldn't have something I wanted. From my earliest memories, I was obsessed with homes. While other kids played house, I designed them. My bedroom walls were covered with magazine cutouts of oceanfront properties and architectural sketches. I'd spend hours with colored pencils drawing floor plans and elevation views. When I was 10, I announced at dinner that I would build beautiful houses by the ocean someday. "That's a nice hobby, Cassie," my father said, barely looking up from his plate, "but you need to focus on practical subjects that will get you a stable job." My mother nodded. "Architecture is for men with wealthy fathers, sweetheart. You should consider nursing or teaching." That was the first of countless times my dreams were dismissed as childish fantasies. It might not have hurt so much if my younger brother Kevin hadn't received such different treatment. Kevin was 3 years younger, athletic and charming in that effortless way some people just are. He was also my parents' clear favorite, though they deny it to this day. When Kevin announced he wanted to be a professional baseball player at age 8, my parents immediately signed him up for elite coaching and traveled to every game. When he later switched to wanting to be a businessman, they nodded approvingly and started talking about him taking over my father's insurance agency someday. The contrast in how they treated our ambitions became painfully clear when I was 17. I'd secretly entered an architectural design competition through my high school and won first place at the state level. The awards ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in Hartford. The same day, Kevin had a regular season baseball game. "We're so proud of you," my mother said when I showed her the invitation, "but we already committed to Kevin's game. You understand, right? This is just a school contest, but scouts might be watching Kevin." I went to that ceremony alone, taking the bus 2 hours each way. When I returned home with my trophy and a $500 scholarship check, my parents were hosting a celebration dinner Kevin's team had won, and he'd played well. My achievement was acknowledged with a quick "that's nice, honey," before they returned to praising Kevin's double play. That night, I cried in my room until my Aunt Rebecca called. My mother's sister was everything. My mother wasn't creative, encouraging, and able to see me. She had moved to California years before to pursue a career in advertising, and my mother always spoke about her choices with a mixture of disapproval and envy. "Your mother told me about your award," she said. "I'm so proud of you, Cassie. Don't let them dim your light." Aunt Rebecca became my lifeline during those years, sending architecture books and encouraging notes when my parents were too busy with Kevin's activities to notice my achievements. She was the one who suggested I apply to college for real estate development instead of architecture. "You've got the eye for design, but also the head for business, sweetie." When I announced at dinner senior year that I'd been accepted to Boston University's business program and planned to specialize in real estate development, my father frowned. "That's an unstable industry, Cassandra. One recession and you're finished. Plus, it's so competitive," my mother added. "Wouldn't you rather do something more suitable? Human resources is a nice field for women." I stood my ground for once. "This is what I'm doing." My father shrugged. "Well, don't come crying to us when it doesn't work out." What they didn't know was that I'd already decided I would never cry to them again. My parents' final gift to me was the news that they wouldn't be helping with my college expenses despite having saved for it since my birth. "We need to keep that money liquid for emergencies," my father explained. The following month, they bought Kevin a new car for his 16th birthday. I moved to Boston with my savings from 3 years of after-school jobs and a determination that would become my hallmark. Within a week, I had lined up a job as a barista, another shelving books at the university library, and a weekend gig giving tours at a historic house museum. Between classes and work, I slept maybe 4 hours a night that first semester. My roommate Zoe Sullivan was a sociology major from Seattle with purple hair and unshakable loyalty. She noticed how I nearly fell asleep in our shared bathroom one morning and started bringing me coffee and making sure I ate regularly. "Your parents are seriously not helping at all," she asked one night after I'd finished a shift and was starting on homework at 11 p.m., "even though they can't afford it." "They're investing in Kevin," I said, simply too tired to manage bitterness. By sophomore year, I had moved from my campus jobs to a part-time position at a real estate office, answering phones and learning the business from the ground up. By junior year, I had my real estate license and was showing apartments on weekends. The summer before senior year came my first big break. A tiny fixer-upper condo came on the market near campus. It had water damage and needed everything, but the location was perfect. I had saved almost every penny from my jobs and had just enough for a down payment. My boss at the real estate office helped me secure a mortgage, and I spent that summer sleeping on Zoe's couch and renovating that condo myself, learning from YouTube videos and the occasional help of classmates studying construction management. 3 months later, I sold it for a $30,000 profit, which went straight into my tuition fund. I was proud enough of this accomplishment to call my parents and share the news, something I rarely did anymore. Their response was lukewarm at best, but a week later they showed up unannounced at my apartment. "We're so proud of you, sweetie," my mother said, hugging me with unusual warmth. "You've really shown initiative." My father actually smiled. "That's my girl. Always had a good head for business." Their sudden approval felt intoxicating after years of indifference. We had dinner at an Italian restaurant they insisted on paying, and they asked detailed questions about my flip and my classes. For the first time, I felt seen by them. Then, over dessert, my father cleared his throat. "Cassie, we have a situation. Kevin's business venture needs capital." I didn't even know Kevin had a business venture. He was only 19 and a sophomore at community college. My father explained that Kevin was developing a sports app that needed investor funding. They'd put in some money, but they needed more. "We thought, since you've shown such aptitude for making money grow, you might want to invest in your brother's future," my mother said, squeezing my hand. "How much are you thinking?" I asked already, feeling my stomach sink. $20,000, my father said confidently. "You'd be a part owner. Once this app takes off, you'll make it back tenfold." $20,000 was every penny I had saved from my condo flip after putting some toward tuition. It was my safety net, my next investment, my future. "I need to think about it," I said. My mother's face fell. "You don't believe in your brother. It's not that—" "After all we've done for you," my father added. The guilt trip continued through dessert and the ride back to my apartment. By the time they left, I had written them a check for $20,000. Their approval had cost exactly that amount. 2 months later, I discovered the truth. There was no app, no business venture. Kevin had racked up gambling debts during his freshman year that my parents were covering up. My investment had gone straight to a loan shark in Providence. When I confronted them, my mother cried and my father shouted. "You think you're so perfect," Kevin spat at me. "Miss Successful with her real estate license." "You lied to me," I said, looking at each of them. "You stole from me." "Don't be so dramatic," my father said. "It was an investment that didn't work out." "That's business." "We're family," my mother added. "We help each other." But only in one direction, I realized. Only to support Kevin. I nearly dropped out that semester. With my savings gone, I couldn't afford my final tuition payment. I was working 3 jobs again, but falling behind in classes from exhaustion. Then Dr. Thomas Wright, my real estate development professor, called me into his office. "Miss Mitchell, your work has been suffering," he said bluntly. "You have too much potential to waste. What's going on?" Maybe it was his directness or just my exhaustion, but I told him everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "There's a developer's scholarship that hasn't been awarded yet this year," he said finally. "The application deadline has passed, but I'm on the committee. I think they would consider a late application from a student who flipped a property while maintaining a 3.8 gigapascals. That scholarship saved my degree." Dr. Wright also connected me with a paid internship at Wheeler Real Estate Development for my final semester. He never mentioned our conversation again, but he became another person, along with Aunt Rebecca and Zoe, who saw something in me when my family couldn't or wouldn't. My parents and Kevin attended my graduation. They took photos, and my mother cried appropriately. As we stood on the lawn after the ceremony, my father clapped me on the shoulder. "We always knew you'd make it through," he said. "But the real celebration is for Kevin. He just got an entry-level position at Midwest Insurance." Following in my footsteps, just like that, my achievement became about Kevin again. My internship at Wheeler Real Estate Development turned into a full-time job after graduation. I started as a project coordinator, essentially a glorified assistant, but I was determined to learn every aspect of the business. I stayed late, came in weekends, and volunteered for the projects no one else wanted. Victoria Hayes, the executive vice president of development, noticed. She was a legend in Boston real estate, a woman who had fought her way up in the 1,990 seconds when the industry was even more of a boys' club than it is now. She wore impeccable suits, never raised her voice, and terrified most of the staff. 6 months into my job, she stopped by my cubicle at 8 p.m. on a Friday. "Mitchell, why are you still here?" she asked, reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Finishing the comparative market analysis for the Dorchester project, I replied, trying not to show my exhaustion. She picked up my report and scanned it. "This level of detail isn't necessary for an initial assessment." "I know, but I found some interesting patterns in the price per square foot variations that might impact our offering." Victoria studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Have it on my desk Monday morning. And Mitchell, go home. The building will still be here tomorrow." That report became my first stepping stone. Victoria began requesting me for her projects, and within a year, I was promoted to junior developer. My salary doubled, allowing me to rent a decent apartment and start rebuilding my savings. I sent my parents a text about my promotion. My father replied, "Good for you. Kevin just got promoted to account manager after only 10 months. I stopped sharing my career news after that. 3 years into my time at Wheeler, I got my big break. A mixed-use development in South Boston had stalled under another project manager. Victoria assigned it to me with a simple instruction: fix it. I worked 18-hour days for 2 months straight. I renegotiated with contractors, revised permits, and completely redesigned the residential component to better suit the neighborhood demographic. When the project not only got back on track but pre-sold 80% of its units before completion, I was promoted to senior developer. At 30, I was the youngest senior developer in the company's history. The Boston Business Journal did a small feature on me and the South Boston project. I didn't send it to my parents, but Aunt Rebecca must have, because my mother called. "We saw your picture in that business magazine," she said. "Your hair looked nice. Is that what young professionals are wearing these days?" Not a word about the project or promotion. "We're thinking of visiting Boston next month," she continued. "Kevin's been stressed at work. His boss is so demanding. A little getaway might be nice." I offered to recommend hotels, knowing exactly where this was heading. "Oh, we thought we'd stay with you. Family shouldn't have to pay for hotels." They stayed 4 days in my 1-bedroom apartment, taking my bed while I slept on the couch. They didn't want to see my project. Those construction sites are so dirty, but they did want me to take days off to show them around. When I explained I had meetings I couldn't miss, my mother sighed dramatically. "Your work has always come first, hasn't it, Cassie?" The real purpose of their visit became clear the final night. Kevin had started his own insurance agency and needed investors. They didn't directly ask me. This time they'd learned from last time, but the hints were about as subtle as a wrecking ball. "I'm not in a position to invest right now," I said firmly. "I'm saving for my own projects." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "I see," my father said. "Too busy with your fancy development career to help your brother." "After all we've done for you," my mother added right on cue. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. They left the next morning without saying goodbye. A month later, I met Ryan Campbell at an industry event. He was charming, handsome, and a developer at a competing firm. When he asked me to dinner, I surprised myself by saying yes. We dated for 6 months, and for a while I thought he might be the one. He listened to my ideas, respected my career, and seemed genuinely interested in my dreams of starting my own development company someday. Then came the waterfront proposal. Wheeler was competing for a prime development opportunity along Boston's harbor. Victoria had assigned me as the lead on our proposal, and I had been working night and day on an innovative concept that would incorporate public spaces with luxury condos in a way that would satisfy both the city and our profit margins. The night before our presentation to the selection committee, Ryan took me to dinner to help me relax. He ordered expensive wine and asked detailed questions about my proposal. In my nervous excitement, I shared more than I should have. The next day, as I waited my turn to present, Ryan walked into the room with his company's team. He wasn't supposed to be there. When his company presented right before Wheeler, I watched in horror as Ryan outlined a proposal remarkably similar to mine, with just enough differences to avoid obvious plagiarism. I gave my presentation in a fog of betrayal and then went straight to Victoria's office to explain what had happened. I expected her to be furious with me for the leak. Instead, she picked up her phone. "James," she said to our company's legal counsel, "I need you to document something. The Waterfront Selection Committee just heard 2 very similar proposals, and I have reason to believe corporate espionage was involved." She hung up and looked at me. Sleeping with the competition was sloppy Mitchell, but what Campbell did was illegal. Wheeler didn't get the waterfront project, but neither did Ryan's firm. After Victoria's call, the committee decided to start the process over with new submissions. Ryan was fired when his firm investigated Victoria's allegations. When the story made the rounds in industry gossip, I called my parents, needing some family support after the public humiliation. "Well," my mother said, after I explained, "men don't like women who are too career-focused. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise." "What your mother means," my father added, "is that you probably just got lucky with those other projects. This business is cutthroat. Maybe it's time to consider something more stable." I hung up and called Aunt Rebecca instead. 5 years after the Ryan Campbell incident, I had rebuilt my professional reputation and then some. At 32, I left Wheeler to start Mitchell Development Group with Victoria's blessing and a glowing recommendation. She had become more than a boss. She was a mentor and friend who understood my drive because she shared it. "You're ready, Mitchell," she told me over farewell drinks. "Just remember what I taught you in this business: integrity is as important as innovation." Starting my own company meant starting small. I leased a tiny office in an up-and-coming neighborhood and hired Madison Parker, a recent business graduate, with a razor-sharp mind and unwavering loyalty as my assistant and only employee. We worked out of that 2-room office for months, pursuing small projects and building relationships with contractors, architects, and city officials. My big opportunity came unexpectedly through a connection from Dr. Wright, my college professor who had kept in touch over the years. A prime oceanfront parcel in a developing area north of Boston had become available after the original developer backed out. The asking price was steep, but the potential was enormous. I called the opportunity the Oceanside Residences and poured everything into the proposal: my design, sense, business acumen, and the lessons learned from every success and failure. It would be a mixed development of luxury oceanfront villas and more affordable townhomes, set back from the water with shared amenities and public beach access that would satisfy both high-end buyers and city requirements. The day after I submitted my proposal to the city planning board, my parents showed up at my office unannounced. Madison buzzed me with confusion in her voice. "Miss Mitchell, your parents are here. They don't have an appointment." I hadn't spoken to them in almost a year, not since a disastrous Thanksgiving where my mother had spent the entire meal detailing Kevin's new house and promotion while asking me when I was going to settle down. Now they were sitting in my reception area looking oddly out of place among my modern furniture. "Cassie!" my mother exclaimed, hugging me as if our relationship was perfectly normal. "Your office is so unique." "What brings you to Boston?" I asked, not bothering to mask my suspicion. "Can't parents visit their successful daughter?" my father replied, but the tight smile didn't reach his eyes. Over lunch at a nearby restaurant, they finally got to the point. "Kevin's getting married," my mother announced. "To a lovely girl from his office. Jennifer. They're perfect together." "That's great," I said sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't hate my brother. "When's the wedding?" "June. At the Lakeside Country Club," my father said. "It's going to be quite an event. And that's why we're here," my mother continued. "The wedding is going to be expensive, and with the house they just bought." I set down my fork. "You want money. Not want Cassandra," my father corrected. "We thought you might like to contribute to your brother's happiness. Family helps family. Like you helped me through college, I couldn't help asking." My mother's face hardened. "You've always been so independent. Kevin needs more support." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, but no. I'm in the middle of the biggest project of my career, and every cent I have is committed to that." "What project?" my father asked, suddenly interested. Against my better judgment, I told them about Oceanside. I even showed them some preliminary renderings on my phone, pride momentarily overriding caution. They left shortly after my refusal, having soured the reunion. 3 days later, I received a call from the planning board requesting an urgent meeting. When I arrived, the chairman looked uncomfortable. "Miss Mitchell, some concerns have been raised about your company's financial stability," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "We've received anonymous information suggesting that Mitchell Development Group is significantly overleveraged and may not be able to complete the Oceanside project." The folder contained financial projections that were completely fabricated but used just enough real information about my company to seem plausible. Information that only someone who knew my history would have. "These are entirely false," I said, maintaining my composure with effort. "I can provide audited financials that prove it." I did, but the damage was done. 2 key investors pulled out, citing concerns about project viability. The planning board delayed their decision, and my perfect oceanfront opportunity began slipping away. The betrayal cut deep because I knew exactly who was behind it. My parents had never wanted me to succeed on my own terms, and when I refused to finance Kevin's wedding, they had decided to sabotage my dream project. I was ready to admit defeat when James Thornton called. James had been the legal counsel at Wheeler who had helped me after the Ryan incident, and he had since moved to venture capital. "Victoria told me about your Oceanside project," he said, "and about your current difficulties. I'd like to meet." James and his investment group not only provided the capital I needed, but also made calls to the planning board vouching for Mitchell Development Group. The project was back on, though the delay had cost me significantly in both money and credibility. 2 months later, I received a cream-colored envelope in the mail. Kevin and Jennifer's wedding invitation addressed to Cassandra Mitchell and guest. I considered not going, but ultimately decided I wouldn't give my parents the satisfaction of my absence. The wedding was as lavish as my parents had suggested, held at an exclusive country club with no expense spared. During the reception, I sat at a table far from the family with distant cousins, who asked polite questions about my apartment in the city. As I waited at the bar for a drink, I overheard my mother talking to her sister, my Aunt Rebecca. "Of course we're proud of Cassie's little business," she was saying, "but you should see Kevin's new house. 5 bedrooms and a 3-car garage. Now that's success." Aunt Rebecca caught my eye over my mother's shoulder and gave me a look of such understanding that I nearly cried. Later, she found me on the terrace. "Your parents will never see you clearly, Cassie," she said, hugging me tightly. "It's not about you, it's about them. Their vision is too narrow to see how extraordinary you are." I left the wedding early, more determined than ever to make Oceanside a success, not to prove anything to my parents, but to honor the vision that had driven me since childhood. With Oceanside underway, I finally had room to breathe and think about my personal life. At 33, I had focused so exclusively on my career that relationships had always taken a back seat. The few men I had dated since Ryan usually ended things when they realized my company would always be my priority. That changed when I met Nathan Phillips, the architect I hired for some redesigns on the Oceanside project. Nathan was brilliant driven and understood my passion for development because he shared it in his own field. He had sandy hair that always looked slightly wind-blown, wore glasses that kept sliding down his nose when he was focused on drawings, and had a laugh that made everyone in the room want to join in. Our professional relationship quickly developed into friendship and then something more. For the first time, I was with someone who didn't see my ambition as a threat or a phase I would outgrow. We would spend evenings on my small balcony, drinking wine and discussing designs or walk construction sites together, both seeing the potential beneath the dirt and concrete. 6 months into our relationship, Nathan suggested we visit his parents in Portland for a weekend. It seemed only fair that I meet his family, since he had already met Aunt Rebecca, though not my parents. I had kept those worlds firmly separated. My parents will love you, he assured me. They've always valued people who build things. The visit went beautifully. Nathan's parents were warm, interested in my work, and treated me like I was already part of their family. His mother took me aside at one point and said, "You remind me of myself at your age. Don't let anyone limit what you can achieve." In the glow of that acceptance, I made a critical error. I invited Nathan to my parents' annual Labor Day barbecue, an event I usually attended solo for the minimum polite period before escaping. "I want you to meet my family," I told him, ignoring the warning bells in my head. From the moment we arrived at my parents' suburban home, I knew it was a mistake. My mother greeted Nathan with excessive warmth while barely acknowledging me. My father immediately pulled him into a conversation about the financial stability of architecture as a profession. Kevin and Jennifer were there showing photos of their honeymoon to anyone who would look. I was helping my mother in the kitchen when I overheard my father on the patio. "Cassandra was always a difficult child," he was telling Nathan. "Headstrong. Never wanted to listen to advice." "She's incredibly talented," Nathan replied, loyalty evident in his voice. "Her Oceanside project is revolutionary for that area." "Well, she was always playing with her little house drawings," my mother chimed in, having moved to the patio without my noticing. But so sensitive when anyone offered constructive criticism. We had to walk on eggshells around her temper. I had never had a temper. If anything, I had been too accommodating, too eager to please them, despite the constant dismissal of my dreams. The final blow came when a beautiful woman around our age arrived late to the barbecue. My mother rushed to greet her with hugs. "Nathan, this is Melissa Cooper. She grew up next door to us. She's an interior designer now. You two have so much in common." I recognized the name immediately. Melissa was Nathan's ex-girlfriend from graduate school. They had dated for 3 years before she took a job across the country. My mother had deliberately invited her without telling me. The drive back to Boston was silent. When we finally reached my apartment, Nathan turned to me. "Were you ever going to tell me about your family?" "What do you mean?" "Your parents spent the entire day telling me stories about your temper tantrums, your jealousy of Kevin, how you've always been competitive and difficult. Your mother showed me a dent in the hallway wall where you apparently threw a trophy when you were 16. "Kevin did that," I said quietly. "After losing a game, they blamed me." Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "See, that's hard to believe based on everything they told me. And your mother mentioned you've had issues with jealousy in past relationships, too. They invited your ex-girlfriend to ambush you," I pointed out. "Doesn't that seem calculated?" Melissa said they've kept in touch for years. They didn't know we had dated, but I knew they had. My mother had always kept tabs on me through mutual friends and social media. She knew exactly who Melissa was to Nathan. The seed of doubt had been planted, and over the next few weeks it grew. Nathan started questioning my stories about my childhood, my college years, my career challenges. The man who had believed in me completely was now looking at me through the lens my parents had crafted. When I confronted him about his change in attitude, he sighed. I just don't know what to believe anymore, Cass. Your parents seem so normal and supportive, but the way you describe them. You think I'm making it up? I asked, hurt bleeding into anger. I think maybe you've misinterpreted some things. They're your parents. They love you. The argument escalated until Nathan finally said the words that ended us. Maybe the problem isn't everyone else. Maybe it's you. After he left, I called Zoe, sobbing. She came over immediately with ice cream and wine and sat with me as I tried to understand how my parents had managed to destroy the one healthy relationship I'd had. They can't stand to see you happy on your own terms, Zoe said, refilling my wine glass. It threatens them. Madison came over the next day to help me pull myself together for an important meeting. You can fall apart again tonight, she promised, but right now Oceanside needs you focused. I threw myself back into work, the familiar refuge it had always been. But the breakup with Nathan had left me questioning myself in a way I hadn't for years. If he couldn't see the truth about my family despite knowing me so well, was I the delusional one? That question led me to Dr. Sarah Chen, a therapist recommended by Victoria who had noticed my struggling. In our first session, I poured out the whole family history, half expecting her to tell me I was overreacting. Instead, she said, "What you're describing sounds like a family system with narcissistic dynamics. Your parents positioned your brother as the golden child and you as the scapegoat roles that had nothing to do with your actual behaviors and everything to do with their needs." Over the next few months, Dr. Chen helped me understand the patterns that had shaped my family relationships and my responses to them. I learned about emotional manipulation gaslighting and how to set healthy boundaries. You can't change them, she told me, but you can change how you respond to them. With therapy support from true friends and the imminent completion of Oceanside, I began to rebuild my confidence. Nathan had moved on quickly to Melissa, according to mutual friends, but I was healing, focusing on creating the life and career I had always dreamed of. My parents continued their pattern of minimal contact, unless they wanted something which suited me fine. I was learning that family isn't always defined by blood, but by who shows up for you consistently. For me, that was Aunt Rebecca, Zoe, Madison, Victoria, and the other supporters who had believed in me when my parents couldn't or wouldn't. The Oceanside residences exceeded even my most optimistic projections. The luxury villas sold quickly to buyers drawn to the innovative design and oceanfront location, while the townhomes attracted young professionals who appreciated the shared amenities and reasonable price point. The project won 3 industry awards and was featured in Architectural Digest with Nathan's firm credited for the design. I made sure he received full recognition despite our personal history. The centerpiece of the development was the flagship villa, a 5,000 square foot masterpiece perched on the best lot with panoramic ocean views from 3 sides. It featured a rooftop terrace infinity pool floor-to-ceiling windows and sustainable materials throughout. During construction, I had often stood on that empty lot watching the sunrise and envisioning the home it would become. When the project was complete, I made a decision that surprised even Madison. "I'm buying the flagship villa," I told her one morning. "For myself." Madison blinked. "That's the $6 million one." "Yes," I confirmed. "I've run the numbers. With the project's success and our upcoming developments, I can afford it." "Barely," I added with a laugh, "but I can make it work." The truth was, I had been saving and investing aggressively for years, living well below my means even as my income grew. This purchase would stretch me financially, but it represented everything I had worked for, not just professional success, but the literal manifestation of those childhood drawings of oceanfront homes. The closing process was straightforward, and on my 34th birthday, I received the keys to my dream home. That night, I sat alone on the empty terrace with a bottle of champagne watching the moon rise over the Atlantic and feeling for perhaps the first time truly proud of what I had accomplished. After furnishing the villa with carefully selected pieces that honored the architecture without overshadowing it, I decided to host a housewarming party. It would serve dual purposes, celebrating this personal milestone and showcasing the development to potential investors and clients for Mitchell Development Group's next projects. Despite years of disappointment, some childish part of me still sought my parents' approval. I sent them a formal invitation with a handwritten note. "I'd love for you to see what I've built. It would mean a lot to have you there." Their response came 3 days later via text message, not even a call or proper letter. "Sorry, Cassie, we can't make it. Your place looks too showy in the photos, not something to be proud of when so many are struggling. Maybe tone it down a little, love, Mom and Dad." I stared at the message for a long time, a familiar hurt blooming in my chest. Then I noticed a social media notification my mother had tagged me in a post. Opening it, I felt a flash of anger so strong it made me dizzy. There was my mother beaming beside my father, Kevin, and Jennifer, standing in front of Kevin's colonial-style house with a housewarming banner visible in the background. So proud of Kevin and Jennifer's beautiful new home. Family gathering to celebrate their achievement this weekend. Number proud parents. Number family first. The post was dated for the exact weekend of my housewarming party. I called Zoe in tears. They're holding a housewarming for Kevin the same weekend as mine. They're not coming because they're celebrating his 3-bedroom colonial while dismissing my life's work as showing off. Zoe's response was immediate and fierce. "Invite everyone." "What?" "Invite everyone they know. Their friends, their colleagues, the neighbors, your extended family. Everyone except them." The idea was so perfectly aligned with my hurt and anger that I laughed through my tears. "That's petty." "It's strategic," Zoe corrected. "They've spent your entire life making you feel small. Show them. Show everyone exactly what they've been missing." That night I couldn't sleep. I stood on my terrace looking at the moonlight, reflecting off the water, and made a decision. I would host my housewarming as planned, but I would expand the guest list dramatically. Anyone who had ever known my parents or me would receive an invitation to see the achievement my parents couldn't acknowledge. The next morning, I called Madison into my office. "I need you to help me compile a guest list," I said, and explained my plan. Madison, ever professional, didn't blink. "I'll need access to your parents' social media connections and your extended family contacts." Between us, we created a comprehensive list of my parents' friends, colleagues, golf club associates, distant relatives, and neighbors, alongside my usual professional contacts and friends. I hired the best caterer in Boston, a renowned local band and decorators who transformed the already stunning villa into a showcase worthy of a design magazine. The invitations went out with a personal note. "I'd love to show you the culmination of my lifelong dream, a home by the ocean I designed myself." As the RSVPs began flooding in, I felt a mixture of vindication and anxiety. People were coming, lots of people, including many who had known me only as Richard and Diane's daughter or Kevin's sister. For the first time, they would see me as I had become, not as the sidebar to the family narrative. A week before the party, my cousin Rachel called. "Cassie, I just wanted to let you know. Your parents found out about the party." Someone showed them the invitation. My heart raced. "How did they react?" Rachel hesitated. "They're upset. They're saying you're trying to embarrass them, that you've always been competitive with Kevin." Of course they were. It was their standard response to anything I achieved: minimize, dismiss, make it about them. "Are you still coming?" I asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Wouldn't miss it," Rachel replied firmly. "It's about time someone in this family celebrated you properly." The night before the party, I stood on my terrace with a glass of wine, questioning everything. Was this elaborate revenge party really going to heal the lifetime of hurt? Or was I just proving their point about being competitive and showy? Madison had gone above and beyond, handling every detail while I focused on a potential new project. Zoe had flown in from Seattle to support me. Aunt Rebecca had arrived from California, bringing a housewarming gift she said had belonged to her grandmother, a small crystal bowl that caught the light like a prism. "For new beginnings," she said, hugging me tightly. I placed the bowl on my coffee table, a reminder that some family supports you unconditionally. As I looked around at my dream home, I wondered if my parents would ever see it and if it would matter to me either way. The day of the housewarming arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies, a gentle ocean breeze, and sunshine that made the villa's glass and steel exterior gleam like a beacon on the coastline. I had chosen a late afternoon start time so guests could watch the sunset from the west-facing terrace during the event. Madison arrived at dawn, clipboard in hand, ready to oversee the final preparations. She had coordinated everything with military precision: caterers, bartenders, parking valets, security, and photographers to document the event for both personal memories and professional portfolio purposes. The florists will be here at 10, she informed me, checking her tablet. The caterer at 11 to begin setup, bartenders at 3, band at 4 for sound check. Guests arrive at 5. I nodded, feeling strangely calm after a night of anxiety. You've thought of everything. Almost, Madison said with a small smile. She gestured to a section of the main living room wall that had been left conspicuously bare during decorating. The timeline display will go there. The timeline display was Madison's idea, a visual journey of my career and the development of Oceanside, from childhood drawings to architectural renderings to construction photos to the finished product. It told the story of a dream realized through persistence, showing the path from that little girl drawing houses to the woman who had built this oceanfront masterpiece. It's not too much, I asked, suddenly self-conscious. The display felt important, but also potentially self-aggrandizing. Madison squeezed my arm. It's exactly enough. People should see what you've overcome. By 2 o'clock, the villa had transformed into a showcase that exceeded even my perfectionist standards. Floor-to-ceiling windows were spotless, catching the afternoon light. Fresh flower arrangements adorned every surface, their scent mingling with the ocean air. The infinity pool glowed azure against the deeper blue of the Atlantic beyond. Caterers arranged elegant displays of food throughout the open-concept main floor, while bartenders prepared signature cocktails named after different aspects of the Oceanside development. The timeline display had been installed, a tasteful arrangement of framed images, renderings, and milestones that told my story without a word of text. Seeing it complete, I felt a surge of emotion. This was my life's work, visible in one cohesive narrative. At 3 o'clock, Zoe arrived to help me get ready. She had insisted on selecting my outfit, a sleek sapphire dress that matched the ocean view with subtle jewelry that wouldn't compete with the architectural details of the villa. You look like success, she declared when I emerged from my bedroom. Not flashy, just undeniably accomplished. As she helped me with my earrings, Zoe asked the question I'd been avoiding all day. Do you think they'll show up uninvited? I met her eyes in the mirror. Part of me hopes they will. Part of me hopes they won't. Either way, you win, she said firmly. If they come, they have to see all this. If they don't, everyone else still sees it, including all their friends. At 4:30, Aunt Rebecca arrived early, as promised, elegant in a cream pantsuit that complemented her silver hair. She hugged me tightly, then held me at arm's length. You look just like my mother, she said with a catch in her voice. She was a dreamer too, you know. But she never got to build her dreams like you have. As we stood in the entryway, my phone rang with a call from Cousin Rachel. I'm running late, she said without preamble. But I wanted to warn you. I just drove past your parents' house and they were getting into their car. Dressed up. My heart jumped. Thanks for the heads up. I shared the news with Zoe and Aunt Rebecca, who exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Are you ready for this? Zoe asked. I've been ready my whole life, I replied, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. At precisely 5 o'clock, the first guests began to arrive. I stationed myself in the foyer, greeting each person, warmly accepting congratulations and compliments on the villa with growing confidence. The guest list had grown to over 100 people, a mix of industry, contacts, friends, and yes, many of my parents' social circle who had known me since childhood. Mrs. Lawson, my parents' next-door neighbor for 20 years, hugged me with genuine warmth. Cassandra, this is extraordinary. Your parents never mentioned. She trailed off, perhaps realizing the implication of her words. Thank you for coming, I said simply. Please enjoy yourself." By 6, the party was in full swing. The main living areas and terraces were filled with people admiring the views, the architecture, the timeline display. I circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing future projects with potential investors. The validation felt like cool water after years in a desert of dismissal. Victoria Hayes arrived fashionably late, commanding attention in her signature tailored suit. She surveyed the villa with an appraising eye before nodding approvingly. "You've outdone yourself, Mitchell," she said, using her old habit of addressing me by my last name. "This place is magnificent without being ostentatious. That's a difficult balance to achieve." Coming from Victoria, this was the highest praise possible. She gestured to a distinguished man beside her. "This is Harold Blackstone, chairman of Coastal Developments. He's interested in partnering on your Providence project." As Victoria made introductions, Madison appeared at my elbow, her expression tense. "They're here," she whispered. "Your parents. Security just called from the gate." I excused myself from the conversation and moved toward the foyer, my heart pounding. Through the glass front doors, I could see a car approaching the circular driveway, my parents' silver Lexus looking oddly middle class among the luxury vehicles already parked. "Do you want me to have security? Turn them away?" Madison asked quietly. I took a deep breath. "No. Let them in." This was the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated since sending those invitations. Standing in the entryway of my dream home, surrounded by success and supporters, I prepared to face the two people who had never been able to see me clearly. I smoothed my dress, straightened my shoulders, and waited for the doorbell to ring. The doorbell chimed with a soft, melodic tone that belied the tension of the moment. I nodded to Madison, who opened the door with professional courtesy, revealing my parents standing awkwardly on the threshold. My father wore his standard important event navy blazer, while my mother had chosen a floral dress that seemed casual for the occasion. Their expressions shifted rapidly from practiced smiles to shock as they took in the elegance of the foyer and the sounds of the crowded party beyond. "Cassandra," my mother started, her voice unnaturally high. "We thought we'd surprise you. By showing up to an event you explicitly declined to attend," I interrupted, my voice calm and controlled. "How surprising, indeed." My father cleared his throat. "We finished early at Kevin's gathering and thought we'd stop by to see your apartment." "Villa," I corrected. "The $6 million ocean villa that I designed, developed, and purchased myself. The one that was too showy for you to celebrate last week." Several nearby guests had quieted, sensing the confrontation. I could see Mrs. Lawson and her husband exchanging glances. "Doctor?" "Right," my college professor, who had flown in from Boston, moved subtly closer, a silent show of support. "May we come in?" my father asked stiffly. I hesitated only briefly. "Of course. You're just in time for the sunset view from the West Terrace." As they stepped inside, security appeared behind them. "Miss Mitchell, these individuals don't have invitations. Should we escort them out?" My mother's face flushed with embarrassment. Before I could respond, a commotion at the door revealed Kevin arriving unexpectedly. Unlike my parents, he looked genuinely happy to see me. "Cass, this place is incredible!" he exclaimed, giving me an awkward but seemingly sincere hug. I ditched my own party to see it. "Hope that's okay." The genuine enthusiasm in his voice caught me off guard. "You're welcome, Kevin. But I'm surprised you came." He had the grace to look sheepish. "Yeah, well, Jennifer and I had a big fight after I found out Mom and Dad had scheduled our housewarming the same day as yours on purpose. She thought it was cruel." My parents' faces tightened at this betrayal. My mother tried to salvage the situation. "We had scheduling conflicts. It wasn't intentional." "Cut the crap," Mom Kevin said, showing a backbone I'd never seen before. "You literally said, and I quote, 'This will show Cassandra she can't outshine our family with her fancy ocean house.'" The silence that followed was deafening. Several guests had definitely overheard, including some of my parents' oldest friends. "Let's not create a scene," my father said through a tight smile. "We're here now to support Cassandra." Are you? I asked, suddenly tired of the pretense. Because you've never supported me before. Why start now? That's not fair, my mother hissed, dropping her social mask as anger replaced embarrassment. We've always supported you. When I challenged, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. When you refused to come to my state competition, when you wouldn't help with college but bought Kevin a car, when you took my savings for his gambling debts, when you sabotaged my Oceanside project because I wouldn't pay for his wedding? My father stepped forward, face darkening. You've always been ungrateful. We gave you everything. You gave me nothing but doubt and dismissal, I interrupted, years of repressed hurt surging forward. And when I succeeded anyway, you tried to tear me down because my success didn't fit your narrative. The party had gone silent around us, the confrontation now the main event. I was dimly aware of Madison directing the band to continue playing and steering most guests toward the terrace, but many remained witnessing this family explosion. You're making a scene, my mother said, her ultimate condemnation. This is why we couldn't come to your housewarming. You always make everything about you. I laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. My housewarming should be about me, just like Kevin's was about him. The difference is you celebrated him while trying to sabotage me. You've done it my entire life. That's ridiculous, my father scoffed. You've always been competitive with your brother, jealous of the attention he received. Kevin, to my surprise, stepped in. Dad, stop. Cass was never jealous. She was focused on her own goals you and Mom constantly dismissed. My parents turned to Kevin in shock, this betrayal clearly unexpected. In their world, Kevin was the golden child who always sided with them. You too, my mother asked, her voice small. After everything we've done for you. That's the problem, Kevin said quietly. You did everything for me and nothing for Cass, and neither was healthy. It took Jennifer pointing it out for me to see it clearly. My father's face flushed with anger. We're leaving. This whole display is exactly what we expected from you, Cassandra. Excessive attention-seeking and disrespectful. No, I said firmly, finding a calm clarity in the midst of chaos. This display, as you call it, is the result of talent, hard work, and perseverance qualities you never bothered to see in me because they didn't fit your preconceptions. Security had remained nearby, waiting for my signal. With a slight nod from me, they moved forward. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell were just leaving, I told them. Then to my parents, Kevin, you're welcome to stay if you'd like. The choice is yours. Kevin looked between us, conflict clear on his face. I'll stay for a bit, he finally said. If that's okay, Cass. My parents left without another word, escorted by security through the growing crowd of curious onlookers. As the front door closed behind them, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief wash over me. Aunt Rebecca appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. You did it, she whispered. You finally stood your ground. I squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. I shouldn't have made a scene. Honey, that scene was decades overdue. Victoria approached, looking unusually sympathetic. Mitchell, that was. Illuminating. Take a moment if you need it, but remember there are still 50 potential investors on your terrace. Her practical reminder was exactly what I needed. I nodded, straightened my shoulders, and moved through the crowd toward the terrace, accepting kind words and supportive touches from guests who had witnessed the confrontation. Kevin followed, keeping a respectful distance until I turned to him on the terrace. I'm sorry, Cass, he said simply. I never saw it clearly until recently. The way they treated you compared to me. It wasn't right. You were a child, too, I acknowledged. They set us up in those roles. Still, he said, gesturing to the magnificent space around us. Look what you've accomplished, despite them. I'm genuinely proud of you. Coming from Kevin, these words held a surprising weight. For a moment, I glimpsed what a normal sibling relationship might have been like without our parents' toxic favoritism. As the sunset painted the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks, casting a golden glow over the terrace and the ocean beyond, I addressed my guests, thanking them for coming and sharing this milestone. I didn't mention the confrontation, but the supportive looks from many faces told me they understood more than I had realized. The party continued well into the night, becoming, despite the dramatic start, exactly the celebration I had envisioned. People admired the villa, discussed future projects, and treated me with a new level of respect, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. As the last guests departed, and only my inner circle remained, Zoe, Madison, Aunt Rebecca, Victoria, and surprisingly Kevin, I finally allowed myself to feel the full impact of the evening. "Are you okay?" Zoe asked, joining me on the terrace where I stood looking at the moonlight on the water. "I think I will be," I replied honestly. "For the first time, I feel like I've stopped seeking their approval. It's liberating." She smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Freedom looks good on you, Cass." The morning after the party, I woke early and made coffee in my kitchen, still surrounded by evidence of the previous night's celebration. Empty champagne bottles, flower arrangements beginning to droop, a forgotten shawl draped over a chair. Madison had arranged for cleaners to come later, but for now I enjoyed the peaceful aftermath, a tangible reminder that it had all been real. I carried my coffee to the terrace and watched the sunrise over the ocean, the sky shifting from soft pink to brilliant gold. The villa felt truly mine now, christened not just by a party, but by a moment of truth and liberation. A text notification broke the silence, Kevin asking if he could stop by before heading back home. I hesitated before replying yes, still uncertain about our newly adjusted relationship. He arrived an hour later looking tired but resolute. We sat on the terrace with fresh coffee, the morning sun warming the space. "Mom and Dad are furious," he began without preamble. "They spent the whole drive home ranting about how ungrateful and dramatic you are." I sighed, unsurprised but still hurt. Some things never change. But some things do, Kevin countered. "I've been thinking a lot lately about our family. Jennifer's pregnant." "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "Thanks. It's made me think about what kind of parent I want to be." He looked at me directly. "I don't want to repeat their patterns, Cass. I don't want to play favorites or dismiss my kids' dreams because they don't match what I envisioned." "That's remarkably self-aware," I observed. Kevin laughed without humor. "Therapy helps. Jennifer insisted after she saw how Mom and Dad manipulated me into inviting certain people to our wedding, but not others. This revelation surprised me, the idea of Kevin in therapy recognizing our parents' manipulation. "I know this doesn't erase the past," he continued. "I benefited from their favoritism my entire life while you suffered from their dismissal. I can't change that, but I can acknowledge it and try to do better moving forward." "What does better look like?" I asked, not challenging but genuinely curious. "Honesty, boundaries, real support instead of competition." He hesitated. "I'd like my kid to know their Aunt Cassandra, the amazing architect and developer. If you're willing." The olive branch was unexpected, but welcome. "I'd like that too, Kevin." After he left, I felt a strange sense of possibility, not reconciliation with my parents, which seemed unlikely and potentially unhealthy, but a new relationship with my brother based on adult understanding rather than childhood roles. That afternoon, a small gathering formed at my villa, the people who had truly supported me through years of struggle and success. Zoe sprawled on the living room sofa. Madison perched neatly on an armchair. Aunt Rebecca mixed mimosas in the kitchen, Dr. Wright examined the architectural details with professional interest, and Victoria discussed potential investors from the party. These were my people, my chosen family, who had seen my potential when my parents couldn't or wouldn't. As we shared brunch on the terrace, a delivery arrived, a certified letter from my parents. Madison brought it out, her expression concerned. "You don't have to open it now," she said. "Or ever." But I did open it there among my supporters. The letter was brief and cold. "Cassandra, your behavior last night was unacceptable and embarrassing to this family. We demand a public apology for your accusations and disrespect. Until then, we see no path forward in our relationship. Richard and Diane Mitchell. No dear Cassandra. No love, Mom and Dad. Just demands and ultimatums as always. I passed the letter around, watching as each reader's expression shifted from curiosity to outrage. Classic Darvo, Dr. Wright commented. Deny attack, reverse victim and offender. They're making themselves the victims of your supposed attack. What will you do? Aunt Rebecca asked gently. I considered the question carefully. I'm not going to apologize for speaking the truth, but I'm also not going to engage in their drama anymore. I'm setting boundaries instead. That evening, after my friends had departed, I wrote a short, clear response. Richard and Diane, I spoke only truth last night. I will not apologize for that. I'm not closing the door on our relationship, but any future contact needs to be based on mutual respect and acknowledgement of reality. I hope you'll consider family counseling. I'd participate if you're willing to truly listen. The choice is yours. Cassandra. I mailed it the next day, expecting nothing but needing to define my terms clearly for my own peace of mind. 6 months later, my life had shifted dramatically. Mitchell Development Group had expanded, taking on 3 new major projects following the success of Oceanside. The flagship villa had been featured in 2 more design magazines, bringing new clients and investors. Kevin and Jennifer's baby, a girl they named Rebecca after our aunt had been born, and I was cautiously building a relationship with my niece and brother. My parents had never responded to my letter, maintaining silence, except for formal family announcements through Kevin. I had stopped expecting anything different. On a perfect June evening, I hosted a charity event at my villa to raise funds for a program supporting young women in architecture and development, creating opportunities I wished I'd had as a struggling student. The terrace was again filled with guests, but this time the atmosphere was one of pure celebration without underlying tension. Victoria Hayes, now semi-retired but still sharp as ever, joined me at the railing overlooking the ocean. You've done well, Mitchell, she said, her highest form of praise. I had good mentors, I replied, including her in that category. She nodded, acknowledging the compliment. Some people spend their entire lives seeking approval from those incapable of giving it. You learn to stop seeking it and build your own success anyway. That's rare. After the guests departed, I stood alone on my terrace, looking at the same ocean view that had captivated me as a child drawing dream houses. The path from those crayon sketches to this reality had been longer and harder than I'd imagined, marked by betrayals and disappointments I couldn't have foreseen. But it had also been illuminated by unexpected support and kindness from people who chose to see me clearly. I realized that my parents' refusal to attend my original housewarming had been in its way a gift. It had forced me to confront the patterns of our relationship and finally break free of seeking approval I would never receive. Their absence had created space for true supporters to gather, for truth to be spoken, and for healing to begin. Some dreams, I had learned, cost more than money to build. They required courage to pursue, despite discouragement, strength to persevere through betrayal, and wisdom to recognize which relationships nurtured your growth and which poisoned it. Standing in my dream home, surrounded by the life I had built for myself, I no longer felt the ache of parental rejection that had driven me for so long. In its place was something stronger, self-acceptance, and the quiet pride of having created something beautiful and meaningful, regardless of who could see its value. The ocean stretched before me, vast and full of possibility, just like the future I had fought so hard to create. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between seeking approval from others and honoring your own dreams? Did you ever have to cut ties with toxic family members for your own well-being? Share your experiences in the comments. Story might help someone else find the courage to prioritize their own growth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and self-discovery. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into.